of the session. At the end of the session, I'll just read them all out to Bridget, because it's just obviously difficult to answer questions as they're going along. So thanks very much, Bridget, if you wouldn't mind
taking the floor.
No, taking the floor.
Okay, I can do that. What I'm going to do, Donna, is I'm just going to open my presentation, and then that's there. So I'll just share screen there. If can you see that? Is that okay? I presume so. I'm also going to stop my video so that it just helps my broadband. So evening, thanks for inviting me along this evening. Thanks to Green Foundation Ireland, to Donna Mullen, who is one of our Farming for Nature ambassadors, which I'll talk about in a while. I have to apologise up front. I have a slight cold, so I've lost my voice, so I don't always sound this croaky, but it should be okay. So tonight, what I'm going to do is just introduce you to Farming for Nature, to the initiative, what we do and how we do it, but most importantly, why we were set up and what we hope to achieve in the long term. So as per the introduction, I'm Bridget Barry, and I've coordinated the Farming for Nature initiative since its inception in 2018. And we set up Farming for Nature in order to encourage and support farmers across Ireland who are farming or wish to farm more for nature. We felt at the time there was widespread awareness of the environmental damage that was being caused by the wrong type of farming, making farmers feel kind of more apart from nature as opposed to a part of it. However, there isn't much discussion of those who are doing a great job for Farming for Nature about the positive stories, and the farming community don't necessarily have as many good role models as they should. Plus, farmers are at the kind of the coalface or the front line of the biodiversity crisis, and they should be supported. They have many nature-based solutions to the crisis at their fingertips, but this is maybe not shared as much as it should be. So I suppose Farming for Nature, encouraging farmers to feel that they're more part of the solution, not just the problem, is the first step to, we think, a long journey that will require a lot of financial and technical support, but also new partnerships and new visions. So this was the reason behind Farming for Nature. Right, why is my thing not working? Anyone know why it won't go to the next one? Sorry about this. Okay, it should be easier than that. But anyway, so just to give you a background of where we originated from. So like I said, we set up in 2018, and we come under the umbrella of Ireland's first landscape charity, the Burren-Bio Trust. There's a reason for this. I was the manager of Burren-Bio for about 9 years prior to setting up Farming for Nature. And Burren-Bio is the educational charity arm, I suppose, of the results-based program, the awards-winning kind of results-based program, the Burren program, which is based in County Clare and County Galway in the Burren. So for over 20 years, the Innovative Burren program has been working with farmers there to support them to actively manage the landscape and produce biodiversity there. And whilst there, we kind of saw firsthand, I suppose, what farmers are able to do for nature when given the right supports. The idea behind the Burren program is that, you know, they actively manage the grazing, they manage their stock densities, but also they manage grazing to the right amount, which in turn produces a really rich and complex biodiversity ecosystem. But the farmers are then remunerated for this work, for producing biodiversity on their land. So it's quite an unusual program, but it works very well. And today, over about 400 farmers manage and maintain the Burren, which is one of Europe's richest ecological landscapes. So we believe, like I said before, Ireland's, like, given the right supports, farmers all over Ireland can produce healthy, nutritious food, but also manage our wildlife, our soils, and water in a way that's positive for all of us. Whilst I was at Burren-Bio Trust, one of the things we set up was an award ceremony as part of the annual Burren Winterage Weekend, which some of you may have heard of. And this award ceremony was celebrating the best farmer in the Burren that have managed to produce the highest results for biodiversity. And we found these awards showed us how proud the farmers were of what they had done on their land, but also how they nearly compete each year for the biodiversity and and how good they were as well as peer-to-peer educators for their fellow farmers and encouraging each other to do more for biodiversity. And this kind of awards that we used to carry out in the Burren kind of gave us the impetus to see what could be achieved at national level if we started this. So this was kind of the first starting point that we did for Farming for Nature. When I say we, I should probably explain, I work part-time for Farming for Nature. I work in mornings. I'm actually based in County Cork these days. And then scientists, Dr. Brendan Dunford and James Moran, they both input on a voluntary level since the beginning. And then obviously, as I'll tell you later, we get a vast amount of voluntary input from all our farmers as well. So where did we start? So I told you just now about the awards that we used to do in the Burren. But I suppose where we started at a national level is we felt it was essential to build up a network of farmers that are doing great work and able to act as role models for others and demonstrate what they're doing. Sorry, I'll just move. Oh, my slide is now working. Great. So we set up 4 years ago, we set up the National Farming for Nature Ambassador Awards in order to find these farmers. So each year we put out to about 200 or so nominators from the environmental and heritage sector, asking them to nominate a farmer that they know across the country that would fit this awards. And basically what we're looking for is farmers that are able to kind of show positive environmental and social outcomes, but also prove that they're still productive as farmers and that they can pay their bills. What we want to show is that, you know, farming and nature don't have to happen separately, that you can farm alongside nature, but still sustain, you know, a family if you need to, that it shouldn't be a case of one or the other. Here you can see, Here you can see the farmers that have been nominated since 2018. So the orange dots is 2018, working through to the red dots this year, which we received our nominations in for the 2022 awards recently, only a couple of weeks ago. And as you can see, we received 62 nominations from 23 counties, which is the highest. So each year, we've been receiving more and more nominations, which we feel is a really positive reflection of Irish farming in general. I suppose that people see the urgency maybe of sharing how to farm alongside nature and that it is possible. So as I say, we received our highest nominations this year, and we hope this will continue to grow, this kind of nominations. The range of nominations this year was really exceptional, everything from 1 acre to 1,000 acres. From conventional to organic to regenerative farming systems. It includes everything from beef to lamb, dairy, poultry, pigs, forestry, horticultural systems. Even I think there's a vineyard in there this year as well. And you know, a lot of the farming systems that these farmers are carrying out, there's some really interesting ideas around agroforestry and minimal tillage, around holistic plant grazing, like composting manure, multi-species swards, rewilding, forestry, and much more. So over the next few months, what we do is then we interview each of these farmers that we've received the nominations from, and we cut it down to a short list of about 30 farmers, and then our judges, the 30 farms then go through to the next phase of the Ambassador Awards, where our judges actually go on site. So here our judges are, I was going to say 10 judges, but actually I think it's got, as you can see, it's gone up actually to 14. Our 14 judges here. And then at least one of these judges, so our judges range from farmers, from ambassadors themselves, to scientists. They work for some state bodies, like, you know, we have Teagasc in there with Bord Bia, we have the National Biodiversity Centre, we have scientists from EIPs and stuff, and then we have fellow farmers. And so at least one of these judges will visit each of us shortlisted 30 farms. So they have an opportunity to speak directly to the farmer, to have a tour of the farm, learn about the farming system, and just see firsthand how these farmers are supporting nature on their land. we actually have a new member of staff, Lucy, helping me do this this year, because the programs of Farming for Nature have come so big that I myself can't do all the ambassador awards anymore. But also what's great is Lucy is actually going to be able to visit all the farms, a short list of farms. So there's a strong consistency as well with the judging. So moving on from the judging assessment, we then get together and we decide on the best farmers suited to join our ambassador network each year. So each year we're looking for new stories and new ways of telling it. We currently have 66 ambassadors in our network, including Donna, as I mentioned earlier. And each year, and this year, we hope to bring on maybe 20, 25 new ambassadors. We feel like whether it's a 7-acre horticultural farm in Donegal or a 500-acre tillage farm in Kildare, we're now at the stage where every farmer in Ireland should be able to relate to at least one of these farms in our network. We cover a huge range of farming systems and land types, and whilst every farm is different, and any farmer in Ireland would say their farm is different even from their neighbours, we feel that you could pick and mix the stories and choose which would work for your farm and your habitats. So we also provide a number of resources to help you do that, but I'll tell you about that in a while. I just have to take a drink, sorry. So the final part of the Farming for Nature Ambassador Awards, and also a key way to get the message out to other farmers, is that once we've shortlisted the 20 or so ambassadors for that year, we take a selection, a cross-section, to make a video about their farm. And we do a 5-minute video on about 6 to 8 farms. And we put this out to the public realm in order for the public to vote for them. Now, it's not that these farmers are the best ambassadors of that year. It's just that they're a cross-section. So, for instance, even the ones up in front of you now on the screen, you have a tillage farmer, you have an uplands farmer, you have a sheep farmer, you have a forestry farmer. So, it's just a cross-section of these different farms that are there. And the reason we do this is to raise public awareness. It's not that the public vote on their favorite video, and then this raises public awareness. They're shared many times. These videos get watched thousands and thousands of times in the month of September, October, when the public vote is open. And it just helps to get out the work of all the ambassadors. So if anyone wants to watch any of our videos, there's about 80 videos now online on our YouTube channel. So you can subscribe to our YouTube channel and see them there. We then culminate the National Farming for Nature Ambassador Awards with an award ceremony in October. This is held in the Burren each year as part of the Winteridge Weekend, which is organised by the Burren Bio Trust, which I mentioned earlier. And the announcement of this public award is just also a great way to get all our ambassadors together. They come from all sides of the country, so it's great to have them all in one place together, sharing ideas. So the winner of, say, the 2000 last year's Public Choice Award were the Dunn family from County Meath. These, just to give you an example, these are tillage farmers with 400 acres, and they're just a great example because of what you can do, because they've actually transitioned recently from intensive to regenerative farming without losing their productivity. So, it's a great story to get out there. They're also an intergenerational farm because it's a father and son team. So they also, have to make enough money to support 2 households. But they're also excellent spokespersons. I mean, Pat, I'm there on the left, and Pat is beside me, and he's the father, and he talks about why he went intensive and the reasons he did it and how strong the push from industry was. But also when Norman came on board, his son, how he understood why Norman has reverted that and how he's encouraged him to bring back some of the farming systems that were there originally. It's a fascinating story, and since that it's been picked up a lot, as many of our ambassador stories have. They've been on Countrywide, they've been covered by numerous national papers, and so it's like many of the stories of the ambassadors, getting each one out there and shared is just a really important part of what we do. So we find the farmers to build the network each year. And as mentioned, we now have 66 ambassadors ranging in so many different farming habitats and farming systems. However, we kind of feel that much of the information that has been coming out in the public realm around farming and environment is not from farmers themselves. And this is another one of our challenges, because the farmers are the real experts. You know, they're on the ground, they have so much to share on the climate and biodiversity debates that we wanted to work on making them more the center stage. We could see that many of them felt they didn't have a voice, and then no one would listen to them if they did. And so we found through developing the Farming for Nature network that this has helped get their voice out there, and that there's a bit more strength in numbers. I mean, one of the feedback from the farmers themselves is how important the network has become to them. You know, that they're not just working in isolation, as you can see here on the left, but they feel they're kind of more determined knowing that others are doing similar work. In fact, I was doing a Q&A last week with a farmer, and he was telling me that, you know, he was so used to his farmers looking over his fence and thinking, you know, he was an organic farmer, and he's saying, you know, I'm so used to them thinking I was weird because I don't use any inputs, chemical inputs, so that I can have bees and butterflies. But he said, you know, I've always known how important it is to my produce that I do have pollinators, in spite of what everyone else told me. And he said, you know, just becoming a Farming for Nature ambassador gave him solace, knowing that there's other farmers out there doing what I'm doing. And it's kind of given him stronger hope to share his story more with his own neighbors. And even though he's been doing it for about 30 years, he kind of feels he's got a bit more strength in doing it and getting them to make the changes more. So what was next after we developed the network? We saw there kind of was a great need to have all the information on you know, what farmers do or what they can do in one place. So we, you know, do what most people do, is develop a website. But as I started looking out there, because I wanted to share a lot of the links and the resources, I kind of felt that a lot of the research was very in-depth and very complicated, and farmers aren't at computers all day. And for a lot of them, they don't have the time to be trawling through research on how to, you know, the best way to build a pond, or, you know, or how to manage their hedgerows and stuff. So I started pulling together a lot of the work that's out there, and, you know, with the help of our farmers, you know, we now have a lot of resources online on how you can farm for nature by habitat or by season. So that I suppose the farmers across Ireland are looking to make changes, that it's all in one easy place. But the important thing, that it's an easy to digest material. So up on our website, we have a lot of stuff. Another area that we started working on is resources that could be printed out and distributed. I mean, I don't need boxes of resources sitting in my sitting room, but I just felt that, you know, if there were kind of leaflets that people, if they wanted to print out for their community group, for their farming associations, or, you know, say it was teachers and they wanted to share it with their students, there was kind of an easy format to print out. So we have up on our website all these kind of different management guides for, say, grasslands or peatland or watercourse management or hedgerows. And each one is kind of clearly laid out as to why you should do it. So, you know, your agricultural benefits or ecological or climate benefits, but also very clear points on how you can, you know, manage these areas for the better, for the habitat. Each one also has a really clear illustration on what's poor, moderate, and good management of these situations. So as you can see here, this is our hedgerow one. And if you go back to the poor one here, you know, there's kind of pointers on what does a poor or hedgerow look like. So, I mean, it's important for farmers to know, you know, because a lot of people just are following what they've been told to do, and they might not see what they're doing. You know, they might have a bit of hedgerow and see what they're doing is fine. But, you know, but at least by looking at these guides, they can see, oh, actually mine looks a bit more similar like that. And in the top left-hand corner, you can see potentially how much biodiversity you might be supporting. So here's moderate. And then I said, here's maybe what a good hedgerow looks like. And therefore the amount of biodiversity that it might be supporting. So like I say, with these guides, there's clear bullet points on why you should do it, but then what you can do to improve your hedgerows. We feel these are kind of helpful for farmers, students, but also maybe for the public and a lot of you. I think it's really important to recognize what good habitats look like. So, you know, if you're maybe Dublin based and you're out driving through Kildare, that you're looking at the hedgerows and you're going, oh, actually, that's a really good hedgerow, or that's not. And that's supporting good habitats, and thriving habitats support thriving biodiversity. And it's good to know what is and what isn't supporting biodiversity. The other thing that we've developed is kind of a month by month calendar or guide as to what nature you might see on a farm. And then also kind of the complementary actions that you can do to improve that wildlife if you're not seeing it or you want to see more around the farm. Again, these are free to download, to print off through our website. And whilst farmers are using them, we also find our audience stretch out to kind of ag science students who might find them as sources of interesting projects, say to compare what's there and what's on their own land. So there, again, each month is covered. And as you can see on the left-hand side, it's maybe what you might see per habitat. And then on the right-hand side, it's kind of practical actions and notes that you could improve on your farm and on your land. So while I was putting together the website, I'm still always very conscious of the voice of the farmer, that they're heard, and always trying to find new ways that they can share their experiences of what works on their land, and more importantly, what doesn't work. So, I mean, when one of the things I've done on the website is I've kind of put up like a top 10 tips from our farmers, which is written by themselves. And Donna's even done one on bats first, how to improve your bat populations and what to avoid if you to help bats on your land. And also there's a lot of, some of these like bats and stuff, and some of it is very applicable for people who don't have farms as well. But anyway, this kind of practical top tips is from farmers in their own words about how they enhance the nature on their own land. And, here on the left, as you can see, it's Jim Cronin's in County Clare's done one on producing good compost. He's a horticulturist. And John there on the right, who is a dairy farmer, has done one on he's done one on holistic plant grazing. Sorry. So there's everything up there, like I say, from bats to fens, upland grazing to agroforestry. And it's free for anyone to access. These are just short excerpts, not complicated at all, just for fellow farmers to get an idea, and then they can take it from there if they want to, look deeper into a situation. Another, as I kind of mentioned before, the real essence of Farming for Nature is nearly hearing the farmers' voices. What I mentioned before about the videos that we've been doing, and I think this is nearly what makes Farming for Nature different, is getting the farmers' voices out there. And in fact, even when I was asked to do tonight, very often when I get asked to do presentations, I'll very much ask that it's a farmer doing it, not me. But it kind of makes sense that people understand what Farming for Nature is about as well. So, and because we kind of feel that farmers, they should be center stage on telling their peers how best to manage the land for biodiversity. So one of the things we've done is developed podcasts to get their voices out there. So we regularly update audios, as well as the films. We update audios from the farms on how to do management for nature. For instance, some of our most recent podcasts are Paul Moore here, who's a dairy farmer down in County Cork. He's talking about how he entices barn owls to his land. Over on the right there is Nia O'Malley at the bottom. She's talking about how to graze the uplands sustainably. She's in County Galway, up by the Slieve Optee Mountains. And then Tommy Early is up there in County Roscommon, and he talks about how to build ponds. I'm not sure if any of you have listened to our podcast, but I myself, I'm just always amazed what incredible speakers these ambassadors are. I mean, they're such incredible spokespersons for nature. These podcasts are for farmers on actions they can take and inspire each other what they've done. But I also think they're great for anyone to listen to. So, do maybe sign up, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, like through iTunes or Spotify or whatever. They're very short podcasts, maybe 10 to 15 minutes each, and they're just beautiful to listen to, as the farmers are so passionate about their land. They may also inspire many of you that aren't farmers, but have a patch of garden, that you can make changes there too for wildlife. So I want to share one of them with you. It's one of my favorite excerpts from the Roscommon farmer there, Tommy Early. It's just a very short 30 seconds, how he explains how a dragonfly on his land blew his mind. Now, I'm hoping that I can share sound. Yeah. So it should, let me know through the chat box if this doesn't turn up all right.
The one that really done it for me was the dragonflies. I'd never been aware of dragonflies at all until when we dug out the pond and it was looking open and bare and flat and empty. Dragonflies came and you could see them flying around, just tipping their tail into it. And what they were doing was they were laying their eggs. So that egg drops down to the bottom, lives as a larvae for, in some cases, up to 4 years on the bottom of the pond. And then one day in summer, you'll see this larva crawling up the side of a reed or stem on it. Out of that little shell, you'll see this dragonfly emerging. You'll see the shell cracking, the dragonfly emerging. You'll see it slowly uncurling one wing, then uncurling the other wing, same as you get out of bed in the morning. Straightens out the 4 wings, then it uncurls the body down. And it's still a limey green colour, doesn't look like much. But then it starts to pump the colour down through each of the segments on its body. It's a little bit like, we'll say, if you had a train sitting on a railway track with the lights off in all the carriages and it's just getting dark, and you put on the lights in the first carriage, then you put them on in the second carriage and the third carriage down along, and it's absolutely fantastic to see that. And then it takes off, and this thing that was lived all its life underwater has just climbed out of, turned into a dragonfly, takes off, and it can hover, can fly backwards, vertical, drop down. Amazing. You can see that for yourself when you have a little pond or access to some, but dragonflies, they need still water. It doesn't work in a river. That's why you need the pond. You need that still water. But once you see that, wham. So I put in one pond, and when I seen this, but now I'll have to admit I'm on pond number 15. The one that really done it for.
So I hope you got to hear that, because it's just audio gold. I mean, it's a beautiful description of a dragonfly. Anyway, so sorry. So whilst we've developed all these online resources, we also realized there was a need for other farmers to see what the ambassadors are actually doing on their land. I mean, nothing really beats face-to-face chats. So we developed the Farming for Nature ambassador farm walks. And so these are a great way for the ambassadors to show in person what they've done, but also, as most of the audience are fellow farmers, it creates a kind of great knowledge exchange environment. I think about, and I think the thing about the Farming for Nature, I think the thing about Farming for Nature on the ground is that it's so varied, like no one size fits all. So each farmer has a different farming system, amount of land or land types. Some have a vast amount of habitats already in place, and that have to maybe enhance them or manage them, while others have to actually create habitats because there's nothing there for biodiversity. So and some people may have like 2 acres of land, others may have 200, and very few people, but some people have 2,000. But I think by going to visit a lot of the farms and seeing what the different ambassadors are doing, like fellow farmers can take tips they need back to their own situation to support nature. Last year, we had about 26 farm walks with over about 340 different farmers going across 18 counties. And I suppose this year we hope to have the same, if not more, because COVID restrictions are a bit less. So our farm walks run from about May to October. And whilst they're applicable to farmers, they're also open to people with an interest in farming for nature. So like yourselves. The other thing we developed online, actually, it was a result of COVID, probably like a lot of people, and it was to fill a gap, because when we couldn't do the farm walks, we still wanted the farmer to talk about what was going on their farm. So we developed something called the Ask the Farmer Q&A. But it actually came such a strong kind of another avenue of knowledge exchange that we still have it as one of our ongoing programs, even though our farm walks are up and running again. So the feedback was that, farmers are very busy. And whilst many of them say they want to go to a farm walk in Donegal, but they live in Kerry, they can't actually just leave their farm on a Saturday and travel 6 or 7 hours, but they still want to hear about what that farm is doing. So now between winter and spring, we carry out a fortnightly Ask the Farmer Q&A with one of our ambassadors. And this kind of hour-long session has a different ambassador each time. For instance, last week I had Rod Calderpotts, who has an orchard down in Kilkenny. And next week it's Pat Lawler, who grows cereals and organic beef up in Kilbeggan. And this is just a great way for fellow farmers to actually ask the farmer specific management questions in relation to that farm type. I suppose numbers are a bit less in the absence of lockdowns, but we still have roughly about 50 to 70 people turn up. But what's really interesting is the recording goes up on YouTube, and we found that actually farmers and others listen to this a lot afterwards in their tractors or their cars and whilst working, and many kind of feedback that they kind of enjoy it then as their kind of podcast, whatever, in their own time. And again, while the audience is mostly farmers, it's open to anyone with an interest in farming or a specific farming system. You just have to either subscribe to our YouTube channel or sign up fortnightly on our website. It's free. Another area we found a big gap, we found there was a need for is I was getting a lot of questions sent to me, you know, where can I get mixed species swards seeds, or where can I find Galloway heifers, or, you know, lots of different varied questions. And so I set up an online forum, which means that farmers can write on this forum and other farmers can respond. So instead of me getting all the emails and, you know, having to try and find a farmer that would answer the question, it now goes up in the forum and it's shared amongst farmers. And, you know, it's kind of successful enough way of kind of sharing this information. So as mentioned before, we have this kind of amazing group of a network of farmers, many of which are working in isolation from their neighbours because they're doing something different. And I suppose in order to strengthen their voice, it's important to bring them together and hear from each other each year. So we hold, and I think the important thing is knowing that they have support from each other, not just us as an organisation, but that they can change the narrative collectively. So each year we hold the annual Farming for Nature Network Conference, which is the Saturday as part of the Burren Winterage Weekend. And this is a day-long conference, and it's just sharing the stories of the ambassadors and how they're managing their land and what they're doing, but also their own visions and aspirations. And then it's an important opportunity to kind of share current research and opportunities for like-minded farmers. This is open to other farmers as well as our network to attend. And then, as I mentioned earlier, in the evening of this, we hold the Farming for Nature Ambassador Awards, and the following day, we work with the Burren Bio Trust to organise the Burren Cattle Drive. And many of you may have seen this or even been on it. This festival has been going over 10 years, and it kind of celebrates the age-old tradition of cattle being driven up in the uplands in the Burren in the winter. It's the key tradition that kind of produces this immense biodiversity in the Burren region. And I think this festival is really important as it highlights the importance of grazing traditions in the uplands of the region, and in many ways represents the importance of so many farming traditions of our ancestors that still continue, you know, that supported the land and the farm families. The Burren Winterage Weekend is open to farmers, but also others from across Ireland to join us. And I suppose learn how we can all reframe the narrative around the positive impact farming has on the landscape and on local communities. In the last year, we're delighted to collaborate with different bodies, for instance, these two in Lithuania and Austria, that came to us and wanted to develop the Farming for Nature Ambassador Awards in their own countries. So with our support, both these countries went through the same template as ours of nomination, judges, shortlisting, and then also the videos that they opened up for public vote to get the stories out there. And even we've been contacted recently by Albania, who wants to do the same for 2022. So this is a huge boost. I mean, imagine if we can produce a network of European farmers all doing great work for nature and sharing that amongst their peers. I suppose none of what we've been doing for the last 4 years would be worth it unless we were building up audiences and creating change. When we started, we realized it would take a lot to change the mass farming mindset. But in the short term that we've been around, we feel that we've built up an audience both in the farming and the public realm. I mean, to us, it's as important to be as inclusive as possible, because it's not just for farmers, it's also for the public, for the consumer, that they want the change. Because the more that they want the change, the more that politicians, policymakers, and for other farmers and industry will have to listen to what's happened and what's needed on the ground for biodiversity and for farming alongside nature. I mean, building up like I say, building up an audience wouldn't actually be worth it unless we're having an impact on. I mean, I could throw you up a load of graphs and bore you silly at this time of night. But actually, what I wanted to share with you is some of the emails that I've been getting, and from people, I suppose, that they're so moved by what they've been doing on their farms that they actually take the time to write to me and tell me that how Farming for Nature has impacted them. And so here are some I've kept to share with you that have been sent to me just within the last year. Anyway, we hope that this ripple effect continues. So what's our vision going forward? Well, I suppose we're realistic and we acknowledge that Farming for Nature will require a lot more resources in order to really change mindsets. Plus, we want to advocate for better policies whereby farmers who deliver for nature can be rewarded. We also recognize that farmers need help and advice, and we want to generate good technical resources so they can use and connect with the existing resources, including each other, but also having advisors that can help. So what's next for the project? Expanding our network, so we have coverage in every county and across every farming system and habitat type. Make sure that farmers' voices are heard through media work, through farm walks, conferences, local newspapers, radio, farm training courses, etc. Develop technical resources like videos, podcasts, fact sheets, a lot more on how to farm for nature, but with simple, practical suggestions that have been tested successfully by other farmers. We want to advocate for the needs of the Farming for Nature farmers to policymakers and research institutions. So these farmers have the required financial and technical support. And then we want to continue to build up strategic partnerships with relevant organizations, both in Ireland and beyond, to strengthen our impact. How can you get involved and what can you do? Well, I suppose be part of our network, engage in the work we do and share it and help heighten our profile. You know, you can attend our Q&A sessions, subscribe to our newsletter, follow us on social media, listen to our podcasts and videos, share any of our online resources. If you are in the heritage or environment sector, you know, recommend farmers for the awards for, it will be 2023 now, but also connect us with any relevant bodies that would help with our vision. Just so you know, none of this, of course, would be possible without support of these bodies, which have been on board supporting Farming for Nature since the start. But Farming for Nature really wouldn't be anything without the farmers and the volunteers. The essence of the farmers, Farming for Nature, as I've mentioned before, is the farmer's voice, and their generosity in sharing their stories and educating others is phenomenal. We hope we continue to create small changes on the ground, but we hope that these will lead on to bigger changes in the future. I mean, we're hugely grateful to every one of our farmers, our volunteers, and our audience. So please continue to be part of our story and our journey. I suppose the last thing I wanted to do is just leave you with a short video, hopefully it will work, of some of our ambassadors from last year and their key messages. Here we go.
When we were growing up, we were told produce more and more and more. Don't worry about price. Just keep producing, increase production. But the younger generation, they're changing around. They're coming around to a different way of farming, regenerative farming, where you're actually looking after the soil, looking after everything in nature, and it will respond to you and give you everything that you need.
The biggest thing I take from nature is diversity. Nature is so diverse. There's no monocultures in nature. So on the farm here we have many different enterprises. From a diversity point of view, that benefits nature immensely. As an economical point of view, it benefits my business because I have multiple streams of income.
The future for this farm is where it's going. Like, there's something new every year that we're trying. You just have to be thinking on your feet a lot of the time, and no one can own it. That's the beauty of it.
What we need to do is continue the work so that other farmers can learn from it. It will be useful as we progress the whole notion of biodiversity protection and increase.
I think the first thing we need to do is observe what's going on. Just observe nature, and thereby learn a lot about nature simply by observing.
It's a completely different way of thinking. You're working with the farm is working with you, but you're not trying to change the farm into something that it's not. I think once you step back from Sorry. From that kind of thinking and appreciate it for what it actually is and what it's contributing and what you're part of. I think that's the bigger picture here.
I'm not the standard model for Farming for Nature Awards in that I'm a commercial farmer. I'm trying to make as much money as possible. I'm fairly intensive, but I'm just doing a little bit differently. But if everybody did a little bit, if all farmers, no matter what their enterprise, just did a little bit on a landscape scale, that would make a huge difference.
Well, thanks a million for listening. I'll just turn on my video there again.
Thanks very much. That was just wonderful, and it is so important. Like, it's funny, I was up in Glenveigh, up in Donegal, and you know, I was walking around in the national park, and it's very beautiful up there. But you know, there would be more bird song, you know, in the hedges right outside my door of my house than there was up there. And you know, it got me thinking about why nature is pushed into all these areas of poor land and you know, poor land and poor soils and bad weather. And really, nature needs to be mainstreamed across. Like, if you can get at that in poor land, same with animals, maybe you can get twice the number in good land. And wildlife needs to be mainstreamed across right throughout Ireland, you know, rather than being put in little reserves, you know, and left there. I just I see there's a couple of questions. I'll just open the chat here and have a look. So I've just I worked a bit with Karen Dubsky last year, and actually found a wonderful farmer. So how do we go about nominating somebody? If any of people come up with ideas of like themselves.
Okay, so each January, so unfortunately it's passed for 2022, but each January we open up our nomination application, and what it is, very simple little form. You can't a farmer cannot self-nominate. So it has to come from, say, a farm advisor, or say someone in an organization like yourselves, or like Birdwatch Ireland, or their local wildlife ranger, or the local heritage officer. So someone who would have an understanding of environment and the farm, but it can't be a self-nomination, because it kind of has to come already with a slight accreditation as to why it's been nominated. Otherwise we might receive too many that we could handle. You know, it has to be within our capacity as well. So each January there's a simple online nomination form that's usually open for about 6 weeks. You just have to ask the farmer, is that okay? There's a whole like frequently asked questions online as to what it would mean to be an ambassador. We don't require too much from, you know, our ambassadors. It's just that they have to share what's going on their farm if they make it to that stage. Maybe they'd you know, do a bit of PR for us, or an annual farm walk, or, you know, it's not exactly a full-time job or anything, but it's just that they are able, that the farmer knows that they're being nominated, so that they're aware of what becoming ambassador means. But yeah, absolutely, anyone that has any farmer in mind, even if they're not qualified to nominate the farmer. They might know someone who is, like the heritage officer, the wildlife officer, the farm advisor, or the farmer might be able to tell them, oh yeah, I work with you know, Plant Life, or you know, whatever, or Bat Conservation Ireland, they can nominate, you know, so any kind of NGO can nominate. Yeah, so that's
great.
so nominations are open, yeah, from the beginning of January till about mid-February, and then they're closed for that year.
That's great. So again, if anybody thinks of anyone they'd like to nominate, they might want to get in touch with us come January, and we could always nominate somebody.
Yeah.
I see Tommy Simpson has a message up, and actually I was actually wondering, this is a great thing about being the one who asks questions, chairing the thing, you can ask your own questions. I was wondering if you have any input into the new agri-environment schemes that are coming up. You know, for instance, like the lovely picture you showed of the hedgerows, but I know on my glass hedge, I'm not allowed to put trees in it. You're only allowed to put, you know, there's just so many things would drive you completely crazy.
Yeah.
You know, and I see Tommy asked, well, does Farming for Nature receive any support or advice from Teagasc? So I was wondering how you managed to link in both with Teagasc and with any agri-environment schemes.
Okay, so when you mean the agri-advisories, do you mean the EIPs, or you mean the actual the state-run, the
whatever they
government?
call it, the next one? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, with the Department of Ag, I mean, we're partly funded by the Department of Ag. They know what we do, and I had a meeting with them only about a few weeks ago, and they were talking about, you know, tying in what we do and feeding into it. But I suppose, like a lot of these things, it's like a massive steamship, and it's kind of quite slow to maneuver. So yeah, we're not directly feeding in, no, but they know we exist and they support what we do financially as well as everything else. But it's we're not directly feeding into our schemes yet, but they are looking at our resources as a possibility that we do, and resources that we're developing this year will probably tie in a lot more with some of their technical advisors that are developing the next scheme. With the EIPs, so the European Innovative Partnerships that exist, these are kind of small, for a lot of people that don't know them, the kind of small environmental schemes that exist around Ireland. I think there's about 40 of them now, but they there's like a technical group, I should have mentioned it, within Farming for Nature. So there's Brendan Dunford, James Moran, various other, and they help support these other results-based schemes that exist throughout Ireland through the technical support group. Teagasc, sorry, and that's to your, some of our judges, like John Flynn and stuff, who's the head of kind of the agroecology within Teagasc, Anne Kinsler would be a scientist within Teagasc. So some of our, and Shane Conway, so quite a few of our judges are from Teagasc. And again, they know we exist, we tie in with them. Their farm advisors would be able to nominate any of their farmers. You know, we've obviously done talks for them and stuff like that, but it's quite a large you know, steamship that has that's kind of slow to direct. So, but it's, I mean, it's slow, but it's I feel encouraged that there's more connections going on between Teagasc and Farming for Nature.
That's great. Just one from Karen Mahan. She said, any thoughts on linking Farmers for Nature? For example, the possibility to form nature corridors to encourage biodiversity and link hotspots.
Yeah, so no, it's a really good question. I mean, at the moment, like I said, we only, but I mean, it's great as well. We have 66 ambassadors. But I mean, ideally what you might have is like a green vein running throughout Ireland, you know, showing these farms, but also showing links between the farms and creating, you know, corridor links between the farms, encouraging others to be part of that corridor link. Massive aspirations in that area, but it's also a massive, it will take a long time to get there. But we are looking at ways to encourage more and more farmers. So one of the things that we're looking to develop maybe this year is a peer-to-peer advisory service. So some of our ambassadors if they're willing or able, that they would be able to go out onto other people's farms, because that's one of the things I get asked a lot, you know, even with all our resources and farm walks and whatever and online services, you know, really nothing beats someone coming out to your land and saying, well, I would do that, or I would do that, or, you know, and it's just a farmer talking to a farmer. It's not saying it's kind of the only thing you can do or whatever, but it's just giving and chatting through what might be on your farm and how you can improve it. So, you know, that's another way that we might link up farms a bit more and be able to get the kind of peer-to-peer knowledge out there. But in terms of creating a corridor, yes, I would love it, but it's, you know, it's going to take time. I know we don't have time, but I think by what we're trying to do without mapping it, because it would take time to map, without mapping it, we're just trying to get as many farmers on board as possible. You know, there's 100,000 farmers out there. So, you know, by building our audiences and getting more involved and more people involved, you know, that to me maybe is more important than showing that this is what we've done. But, you know, I think a combination would be important.
Yeah, I think it's kind of, in a way, it's kind of casually happening by having the farm walks anyway, because people who come to your walks are people who kind of live locally or within half an hour probably of your house, because they all have to be back home for the milking or whatever. Like I know with that, the people that came to my walk are the people now who are taking the pine marten boxes and putting them up, you know. So it's kind of, so within a half hour now of my place, I have a few more stepping stones for, you know, for different species. But anyway, sorry, I'll go on.
No, it's brilliant. Yeah.
Malvina says, great presentation, thank you. Kind of left field here, question risks to perceptions of farmers. The World Health Organization and UNICEF recent report showed predatory and pervasive marketing tactics being directed at mothers around the globe to drive infant formula expansion. The marketing of the green fields of Ireland was mentioned as an example of inappropriate messaging in the context of infant health outcomes. How might you counteract the effects of such damaging business tactics so the efforts of good farming practices are not undermined? Thanks, Malvina Walsh, grew up on a dairy farm and now volunteer with Baby Feeding Law Group Ireland.
I mean, this is one area, the formula, baby formula area, but I mean, the voice of industry is very, very loud in the farming sector. There's a few main players that are making a lot of money out of exporting. And there's a few main players making a lot of money out of inputs onto the farm. So the marketing that they have and the voice of that sector is very loud. I mean, I wouldn't even try and tackle them. What we do, and what I'm not saying, I have no idea how anyone else would approach it, but what we do is we're just getting to the hearts of the farmers, you know. So, I mean, like we always say, every farmer, it's about the head, the heart, and the pocket. And, you know, by telling the stories of what Farming for Nature farmers are doing, I think that's what's changing the mindset of other farmers, but also it's also providing the resources. So, you know, it's giving them the head, the kind of the access to be able to make those changes, but also ultimately going forward, we'd like to improve what happens with their pocket as well. And that's our approach, how you tackle massive industry and what they're doing. I'm sorry, I can't help you there.
That's great. I'll just read the next one. It's just from Caroline Hurley. She said, thanks very much. Fantastic work done. Finally earning credit deserved, and hopefully lots of momentum too. And she just signed up to the newsletter.
Oh, thanks for sharing the link.
Yeah, Sarah Breeding. Hi Bridget, does Farming for Nature have any relationship with the agricultural team of Extinction Rebellion? I just joined them as a person eager to join a well-intentioned environmental movement. Sorry if that's a controversial inquiry in any way. Feel free to decline the answer.
No, I think the other thing about Farming for Nature that I think that's quite important to us is that we remain as inclusive as possible. So, I mean, we've been asked to do protests and whatever, but by standing on a certain stance in a strong advocate, in a strong way like that, you know, you're excluding others. So yeah, of course I know Extinction Rebellion, and on a personal viewpoint, of course I have a personal viewpoint on what I'd like or not like to do. But for Farming for Nature, we follow each other on social media, and you know, but ultimately everything that we do and share is about who are we excluding, because I have 100,000 farmers that I have to convert, and I cannot, you know, I need to find my ways of including everyone, not just the converted. I mean, when we first set up about 4 years ago, very much it was easy to bring the converted on board. I mean, even the word, the name Farming for Nature, it's a very, you know, it says what it is on the tin. But what I have found 4 years later, and I think largely because we are very inclusive, is that I now have farmers way further down the intensive spectrum that are coming to us saying, how can I do it? What can I do? I want to do it, because it's all about, the conversation is all about farmers. All farmers have to be part of the solution, no matter what. So it's not just the converted farmers or the farmers that are very far down, you know, that they have amazing habitats and stuff. It has to be all the farmers or have to do something on their land. And I think probably in answer to what your question is, that I fully support everyone to be part of any environmental movement that they would like to be involved in. But I think for Farming for Nature, it's very important that whatever we do, we are not excluding anyone that wants to get involved and wants to proceed down this route. Does that answer it?
Thanks, Bridget. That's great. From Noelle McGuire, she just asked, do you have any farmer with a reed bed? Thank you. Actually, I had a reed bed and my horses ate it, so that didn't work out. Somebody was than I was.
I'm just trying to think. The guy Tommy Early, who would be your the one that was talking about the dragonfly. I hope you guys could hear that. Did that come across okay? You know, with his 15 ponds, I should imagine he possibly definitely has a reed bed up there. I don't know offhand. I have to be honest. It would be a really interesting one to put in our forum if you have kind of a management question around the reed bed that you can put in, and I can share it on social media, and then other farmers can answer. So our forum is up on our website. It's on the homepage forum. Just click on it. You just have to register, but it's for free. Just so that the email comes back to you when someone does respond to you, and you can just put in your question then around the management practice.
That's good. And from Karen Dubsky, she said, really superb. Thank you so much. Read the Green Vein. One could imagine a group award for Nature 2000 site at good ecological status.
Yeah, yeah, that's great.
Then another one, thank you for a great presentation. You've made us curious, and we're already looking forward to taking part in a Farming for Nature walk near us. And from Sarah Breeding, thanks. I hope to meet you someday. The dragonfly guy made me cry. I loved his kind of, he's so right about the addictive nature of ponds. Yeah, I started with one and now I have 3.
There you go.
I'm so glad to hear somebody now has 15 is worse than me. Really
I think you and I were talking, Donna's done a podcast for us. It's yet to be relaunched yet, but it was on bats. And I remember saying to you at the time, like, we've got myself and my husband, a very small patch here of a couple of acres, but one of the first things we did a few years ago is put in a pond, and I was just so surprised within such a short period of time, you know, all the different bats that have been attracted to it, but all the other insects and and the sound of the bird life down by the ponds is amazing. Yeah, just as a response to Sarah, yeah, Tommy is an exceptional speaker, and you know, he was just asked off the cuff while he was being recorded, you know, do you know what was the most special thing for you about building a pond? And he just out of the blue came out of this dragonfly, you know, and it was just a beautiful way of describing it, because you can actually close your eyes and really imagine, you know, that situation of the dragonfly, you know, and the light of the carriages. He did a great job, and it was very impromptu. It wasn't in any way scripted, so it was great.
Fantastic. Listen, thanks very much, Bridget. You're the star now for doing this first. Oh, sorry. Here's one last question, and then we'll let you go. You'll be trapped here for the rest of your life. So I just see this. It just came in from Karen. That came to me. It said, "Does anyone know about ponds which has been lined successfully But now I Karen's probably asked this herself, because bentonite, bentonite.
That's kind of, yeah, it's the kind of what you patch your clay with, kind of to stop your, it depends on your soil. So I'm not a pond expert in any ways, but from what I've heard is that, you know, some ponds have to be lined, some don't, depending on your soil. If you can get away with not lining your pond, it's better, because the natural regeneration of the plants is easier if you don't line your soil. But if you, depending on what type of soil you have, your pond can leak, and then, you know, leak into the soil, and then, you know, you're basically just not, it's not really creating a pond for yourself. So yeah, this what did you say it was, bentonite or whatever? It's what you do to patch it. I don't know, but there are you know, pond landscapers out there, people who will come and help build your pond. I mean, I know a guy down in West Cork. Tommy works with a person up in County Roscommon, so depending where you are. Again, it's probably a good question for our forum, so you can put it up there, and you know, people can respond that they, I'm a pond digger and I'll come, and they can then patch and line your pond if you need to.
That's great. Listen, thanks so much for giving this talk. It's absolutely fascinating. It's just brilliant. So thanks a million, and thanks from everybody on the forums as well.
No problem. So you can just find us on farmingfornature.ie, connect with us on social media, and by all means, don't hesitate to ever email me, info@farmingfornature.ie. If I can help you in any way, I will.
Oh, listen, thanks a million.
No problem. Thanks, Tyler, for inviting us.
Next week, that's great. But next week we'll have another talk next Monday night too, from Mary Reynolds, who is I think she said she calls herself a reformed gardener. So she does wildlife gardens and that kind of stuff. So thanks everybody for coming along, and thanks again, Bridget. That was great.
Take
All
care.
the best. Bye everybody.
Thank you.